Thomas Mitchell had built his empire from nothing. The 42-year-old CEO of Mitchell Industries owned hotels across 3 states. But his greatest treasures were sitting beside him in a downtown cafe. His twin daughters, Emma and Sophie. The 5-year-old girls, blonde like their late mother, wore matching pink dresses Emma had chosen that morning. Sophie clutched her beloved stuffed rabbit, while Emma pointed excitedly at the pastries behind the glass counter. "Daddy, can we have the cookies with the sprinkles?" Emma asked, her blue eyes sparkling. Thomas smiled, adjusting his simple white button-down shirt. Today, he wasn't the millionaire CEO. Today, he was just a single father on what his best friend had insisted was a blind date with a woman named Grace. His friend had been relentless. "Thomas, you've been alone for 3 years. The girls need to see their father happy. Just meet her. She's kind, works as a librarian downtown." Thomas had reluctantly agreed, but with one condition: no mention of his wealth. He'd been burned before by women who saw dollar signs instead of his heart. As they waited, Thomas watched his daughters color in their books. These 2 little souls had been his anchor since losing his wife Margaret to cancer. Every decision he made now was for them. The cafe door chimed softly, and Thomas looked up to see a woman scanning the room. She had shoulder-length blonde hair that caught the afternoon sunlight streaming through the windows, and wore a crisp white blouse with a soft mint-green pleated skirt that swayed as she walked. Their eyes met, and she smiled. Not the practiced smile he'd grown accustomed to in his business world, but something genuine and warm. "Thomas?" she asked, approaching their table. "That's me," he said, standing. "And these are my daughters, Emma and Sophie." Grace knelt down to the girls' level, her voice gentle. "Hello, Emma. Hello, Sophie. What beautiful pictures you're making." Sophie, usually shy with strangers, held up her drawing. "It's a bunny family," she whispered. "Just like your little friend there," Grace said, noticing the stuffed rabbit. "What's his name?" "Mr. Hops," Sophie said, a little louder now. Emma, never one to be outdone, jumped up. "I drew flowers." "Want to see?" For the next hour, Thomas watched something he'd rarely witnessed. Grace didn't just tolerate his daughters, she genuinely enjoyed them. She listened when Emma told elaborate stories about her imaginary pet dragon. She helped Sophie when her crayon broke, showing her how to color softly with the shorter piece. When Emma spilled juice on her dress, Grace was quick with napkins, reassuring the tearful girl. "Oh, sweetie, it's just a little spot." "Look, it almost looks like a flower." "Really?" Emma sniffled. "Really. You know, some of the most beautiful things in life come from happy accidents." Thomas felt something stir in his chest, a feeling he'd almost forgotten existed. As they prepared to leave, Grace insisted on paying for the girls' cookies. "My treat," she said when Thomas protested. "I had such a lovely time." Outside the cafe, Emma tugged on Grace's skirt. "Will you come have dinner with us sometime?" Grace glanced at Thomas, who nodded. "I'd like that very much," she said. Over the following weeks, Grace became a regular part of their quiet evenings. She'd arrive after work, still in her simple librarian clothes, bringing books for the girls or ingredients to cook dinner together. Thomas continued his charade, dressing down, driving his older Honda instead of the Mercedes, meeting her at modest restaurants. Grace never seemed to mind. She'd smile just as brightly over a simple pizza as she might at the finest restaurant. One evening, as they walked through the park after dinner, Sophie reached for Grace's hand while Emma skipped ahead. "Grace," Sophie said in her small voice, "are you going to be our new mommy?" Thomas's heart stopped, but Grace handled it with the same gentle wisdom she brought to everything. "Sophie, sweetheart, I care about you and Emma very much, and I care about your daddy too. Whatever happens, I'll always be your friend." It was then Thomas realized the truth. Grace's kindness wasn't performative. This was simply who she was. That night, after the girls were asleep, Thomas made a decision that would change everything. The next evening, instead of meeting Grace at their usual casual spot, he picked her up in his Mercedes. She looked puzzled when they pulled up to the city's finest restaurant. "Thomas, this looks expensive. I'm not dressed for—" "You look perfect," he said, meaning every word. During dinner, Thomas told her everything. about his company, his wealth, his fears about people's true motives. Grace listened without interruption, her expression thoughtful. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "I'm not angry that you didn't tell me," she said finally. "I understand why you were careful. But Thomas, did you think I was with you for what you could buy me? I hope not." Grace reached across the table, taking his hand. "I fell in love with a man who reads bedtime stories in funny voices, who braids his daughter's hair even though he's terrible at it, who lights up when his girls laugh. That man could be a janitor or a millionaire. It wouldn't change how I feel." 3 months later, in the same cafe where they'd first met, Thomas proposed. Emma and Sophie had helped pick out the ring, a simple solitaire that Grace treasured more than any diamond empire. Their wedding was small, filled with laughter and the patter of little feet. As Grace danced with her new daughters, Thomas understood that true wealth wasn't measured in bank accounts. It was measured in moments like these, in finding someone who loved not just him, but the girls who were his heart. Someone whose kindness was as natural as breathing, whose gentle spirit had healed a family he'd thought was complete. Grace had seen beyond everything else to find what mattered most. And in doing so, she'd given him the greatest gift of all, the knowledge that love, when it's real, sees with the heart, not the eyes. Years later, when people asked Thomas about his success, he'd smile and point to his family. "Everything else," he'd say, watching his wife help their daughters with homework, "is just numbers on a page."